Pura vida, amigos. This is Greg Basco coming to you from my side porch here in the highlands of Costa Rica. And I'd like to kick off this pretty big comprehensive video review of Topaz AI products, especially DeNoise AI and Sharpen AI. And I've done this video concentrating on bird photography and wildlife photography. And I'm going to do another one in a week or so that focuses on nocturnal landscape photography, where that could be interesting as well. But for now, I really wanted to take a look at the Topaz products that have been getting a lot of attention lately. I'm just back fairly recently to my house in Costa Rica, and like a lot of you around the world, I'm going to be in my house for quite a while, so this is a good time to do a review. But I didn't really have time to check those out because I was in Costa Rica and Ecuador for almost 6 weeks doing workshops and some scouting for new locations. But I'm back home now, and I have a chance to try it out. There's been a lot of positive press out there about Topaz, and I'm actually a Topaz affiliate, and I've even done some collaborations with them for marketing and PR in the past. And so I think they're really pushing the envelope in terms of their plugins. But that said, it remains to be seen whether Topaz DeNoise AI and Sharpen AI are going to be part of my regular workflow. And I'll tell you what, I have a couple of doubts about plugins generally. Keeping them updated and installed properly every time Adobe does an update to Lightroom or Photoshop can be kind of a pain. I also prefer in my workflow to keep my raw files as my master files. And so I do basically all of my processing in Lightroom. I go to Photoshop mostly for graphic design sort of things, or just once in a while if there's something I can't do to a photo in Lightroom and I need to take it over to Photoshop. So I don't like creating all these different copies, TIFF copies and all these things of my raw file just because it gets it clutters up my library, and I don't like that. And third, as far as plugins go, I think they tend to be more kind of automated, especially maybe on the AI side. I do a lot of different things in my nature photography, birds, wildlife, macro, landscapes, all in kind of equal doses. And so for me, every picture I take is kind of unique. I don't use presets or actions in my photos. Every time I process a picture, it's kind of a different experience. And so for those three reasons, I've never been big on plugins in general. But we'll see how Topaz does in this video review. And I think even though it might not make it into my regular workflow, I think it's going to have its place, DeNoise AI for taking care of difficult noise, and Sharpen AI for bringing back some detail in photos where maybe the focus is not quite on, or maybe there's just a little bit of motion blur. But stay tuned for the review. I appreciate it. If you do decide to purchase these Topaz products, please use the affiliate links that you'll see down below, and make sure to hit like and subscribe to my YouTube channel.
Okay, well, let's get into it. I'm going to jump over to Lightroom, where I have a collection that I've built for all the photos I'm going to use for this video review, and also some night sky photos, some nocturnal landscape photos that I'm going to use for a review coming soon of DeNoise and Sharpen AI for that kind of photography, for landscapes at night. So stay tuned for that. But let's take a look first at a series of pictures of a capped heron from the Ecuadorian Amazon that I shot last month. And this was a really fleeting moment. It was an amazing moment. I didn't really get what I wanted out of it, but I love black water and bright subjects like this. And so this was in a blackwater lagoon, and I really liked it. It was a split second, very dark, right after dawn on a cloudy day. So I'm shooting ISO 1600, I think, maybe 3200, and shutter speed of like 1/160th. I'm hand holding from a moving canoe, and the heron we saw for literally maybe 3 seconds. And so I ripped off a quick burst in vertical as the bird was walking along the shoreline, and then switched to horizontal really quickly as I saw he was about to fly away. So let's take a look quickly at this one. And this, I've named my photos accordingly so I can keep track of them. As I mentioned, I just hate looking at this, to be honest, all these TIFFs and different versions of files, but that's what we have to do if we're going to use plugins. So this is a version where I've done my normal Lightroom workflow, where I've did a little tweak on the blacks, but not very much. I've done a little brushwork on the aerial roots just to bring them out a bit, and I've done a little bit of Lightroom brushwork on the bird to brighten him up a little bit, but also to take out the noise reduction that I've applied globally to this photo in Lightroom. And here's my result. It's not bad. You can see I've taken out the noise pretty well over here, even in the roots. And I brought back the noise along with a little bit of texture and clarity and things like that that I would load up in Lightroom on the bird. And it's okay. It's not stellar. So I thought, well, maybe this would be a job for Topaz DeNoise. So in this one, I've done my Lightroom brushwork, except I didn't apply any noise reduction at all in Lightroom. I saved that until I took it over to DeNoise AI, and this is the result from DeNoise AI. And that is a pretty good result. It got rid of a lot of noise in the background, maybe even a little too much on the roots, but that's certainly not a criticism. And it's done a pretty good job of getting rid of noise in the bird and bringing back some details. It's a little uneven. The beak is a little grungy, the back of the neck, and there's some things down over here that are a little bit weird. So uneven, but I would say just on first pass, probably a better result than my Lightroom work. So let's take a look at the next one. And that was just a split second later as the Heron was walking along. So again, this is my best effort in Lightroom with my selective brushwork, applying noise reduction globally in Lightroom, and then brushing out that noise reduction on the bird to bring back some of the detail. And on that brush, I've also applied, like I said, a little bit of sharpening, a little bit of clarity, a little bit of texture. And here's what this one looks like. Okay, not too bad. But I thought it could be better. So what I did is I created a virtual copy of this file, and I left my brushwork on the bird, except for the fact that I didn't apply any noise reduction at all in Lightroom. So this is how the noise looked straight out of the camera with just a little bit of kind of contrast and exposure brushwork on the bird. And I took that over next into DeNoise AI. And it did a pretty good job. As on the previous one, a little bit uneven. Take a look at his neck here and maybe along the feathers that give him his name, the capped heron. And along the beak and back here, but a pretty good job. And, you know, I'm also dealing with some movement. His head's moving a little bit. Maybe I didn't nail the focus quite. Again, it was a tough, very fleeting moment, so I'll forgive myself. So I thought, let's take this file where I've applied denoise, and that was looking pretty good, and take it over into Sharpen AI and see what it can do. And it did a pretty good job, I would say, but again, quite uneven. If you look at the back of his neck over here, and again along the beak, some of the areas here. And so it's I think it's certainly better if we take a look at a comparison of my Lightroom brushwork and Lightroom selective noise reduction versus the final result where I did noise reduction in denoise and added Sharpen AI. And let's go over into compare and take a look. On the left here is my Lightroom version, and on the right is the Topaz version. And I would say the Topaz version is better, no doubt about it, but it's not perfect. Maybe I could work with that a little bit in Lightroom and even out some of these areas. But it is an improvement, and so it has potential in this kind of shot where it's a special image. And it could certainly be better than what Lightroom and my normal processing workflow would offer. Now, again, there are these uneven areas, and Sharpen AI just recently released a new version, an updated version of the plugin that has some selective sharpening tools where you can apply it only to certain areas of the image or mask out areas of the image to which you don't want additional sharpening applied. And we're going to see an example of some buff-tailed coronet hummingbirds down here later where that could be interesting. But overall a win for Topaz, but probably not an A. And let's take one last look where I had high hopes given some of the hype I've seen surrounding especially Sharpen AI. I had high hopes that Sharpen could save me in this case because I didn't get what I wanted. But I had this where the bird was taking off, and I don't mind blur in the wings at all in a flight shot, but I wish the bird itself had been a little sharper. Maybe I didn't quite hit focus. Again, the boat's moving. I have very low shutter speed, and it was a tall order. I didn't nail it, let's be honest, but I hoped Sharpen could save my butt. Now, let's take a look again at my best effort with my Lightroom workflow, global noise reduction, and then some brush work on the bird and brushing out the noise reduction on the bird. And it's something. It's not very sharp at all, and it's still pretty noisy. So I wasn't really able to bring back any detail at all by leaving in some of the noise on the bird. I tried leaving in less or applying more of the noise reduction on the bird, but then I just couldn't really get any detail back. And again, this guy's out of focus, he's out of the plane of focus, and he's also moving. So I have some tough challenges to deal with. Let's see how DeNoise dealt with it. I would say that's better in terms of a noise standpoint, but again, I could have achieved this in Lightroom, right? Just wiping out all the noise and ergo all the detail as well. So it's okay. I decided to take this denoised photo into Sharpen, and hopefully Sharpen could work those miracles that we've kind of been hearing about and maybe even seeing about. But unfortunately, it didn't work a miracle. It's a little better, I guess, but this stuff in here just looks bizarre. The beak looks weird. There's no detail in any of this. And maybe the feet are a little better. But it certainly didn't do what I hoped. And like I said, maybe my expectations were too high. Let's just take one more quick little comparison of my Lightroom version versus the Topaz DeNoise and Sharpen version. On the left is my Lightroom version, and on the right the Sharpen DeNoise version. So it certainly tried, and it did some things well, but it did a lot of things not very well. And so maybe it's just not able to work the kind of miracles we might have hoped for. So let's go ahead and move on to a few other photos and see how Topaz DeNoise and Sharpen AI worked on those. This is a blue-crowned, or now it's called Lessons Motmot, that I photographed in my backyard a few months ago. And this is the full-frame shot, actually. It was quite close. He comes to our feeders in our yard. And I used a high ISO, ISO 2500, and this was the very last light of the day, as you'll see by the catch light in the eye in just a second. I bumped the ISO up mostly because I was doing a tight head and shoulders portrait, and I wanted to use a smaller aperture, f10, so I got a little more depth of field on the bird, and my background was super far away, so there was no adverse effect on the background by stopping down. And I wanted to keep around 1/320th of a second. The wind was blowing, that's why his feathers are kind of ruffled up, and so I shot at ISO 2500. I'm going to compare the two. So this is my raw file that I've processed using my normal Lightroom workflow. Global noise reduction throughout the picture, and then a brush to brush some exposure and sharpness and things like that. A little contrast, a little clarity onto the bird, open up the shadows just a tiny bit, although I want to keep the shadows from the side lighting. I don't want to even things out. And brushing away the noise reduction on the bird. And here's what this looks like at 100%. But while we're waiting for it to load, check out the catch light in the eye here. And you can see that the sun was just going down and it's off to the left of the bird. So this is what I did with my brushwork, and this is 100% again. As I zoom in, I can see that I've got a little bit of where I've gone outside the line. So I'm going to go into develop quickly. And I'm going to take a look at my brush. And so I want to select this brush, and then I'm going to zoom back in again, and I'm going to brush out by hitting the Alt key, and I'm just going to brush that away along his beak. It's not really important for this video, but it's bothering me, so I'm going to get rid of it really quick. And there we go. So here's the before and after of my brush. Okay. That was with Lightroom applying noise reduction globally throughout the picture, and as you can see, it wiped out all the feather detail in the bird. Now again, with my brushwork, I brought that back by taking the noise reduction slider almost all the way down and doing a couple of other things, cranking up the texture a little bit of exposure, brightening up the shadows a little bit, tiny bit of saturation. But basically I'm brushing away the noise reduction. That's the important thing. I have another brush here where I left some of the noise reduction in the bird because I don't need to have all that grain and texture in the eye of the bird. Okay, so that's what I did. And now let's take a look at what Topaz DeNoise AI did with this picture. I'm going to jump back in the library module, and here's DeNoise's take on it. And it did quite a good job of removing noise in the background, but leaving the bird pretty much relatively untouched. And I think that looks quite good. Does it look that much better than my take in Lightroom? And I would say the difference is not that great. Go back and forth one more time. There's still a little more noise, certainly in my Lightroom work, where I brought the noise back. But the detail, to me, it looks pretty similar. I don't think there's a clear winner in this case. And if I wanted to, I could even go back quickly and take a look at my brush again, my main brush. And maybe I want to leave a little bit of the noise reduction in. And hopefully that won't flatten out the detail. But those are all things I can do. And so in this one, I would say there's not a clear winner. And my preference personally on pictures in general is to stay within Lightroom and not have to create another TIFF to have my raw file as my master file. And that's how I would normally work. So that one, maybe about a tie. Let's go back into my collection that I worked up for this video and take a look at another one. This is a red Howler monkey in the Ecuadorian Amazon that I took. And again, ISO 2500, and the light was quite a bit lower here than the Motmot picture. It's a cloudy day in the rainforest, so I'm shooting f6.3, my widest aperture on my Sigma 150 to 600mm lens, and my shutter speed is still only 1/160th. So this is low light, and it's a good test. And so what I wanted to see is how my standard Lightroom workflow, again, you know it, reduce noise globally, and then do some brush work on the monkey to bring back the original noise. And that's what I got there. It's okay. It's not bad. So I took it into DeNoise, and I took it into Sharpen after that. And I would say it did quite a bit better job on the face of the monkey. Again, this is my Lightroom take, and this is with DeNoise and Sharpen. But it's interesting that Topaz Sharpen did not do a good job on mammal fur. And so what I had to do in this picture, I'll take this one over into Develop. This is the one I developed first, taking it into DeNoise and then into Topaz Sharpen AI. And I ended up having to make a brush in Lightroom so that I could brush in some extra sharpness. And I'm going to show you what it looks like with and without that brush. So this is after running it through Sharpen. And it did a pretty good job on the face. But look, it didn't really bring back any of the detail that DeNoise smoothed out in the noise reduction process. By bringing it back into Lightroom and using a brush to brush in some added sharpness, you can see here 34, and also some texture, I was able to bring back quite a bit of detail. Once again, before and after. So that was one where Sharpen didn't really do the trick. I don't know if I can make a blanket statement that it doesn't work well with mammal fur based on a sample size of 1, but that was certainly the experience in this case. And let's look at 2 more pictures quickly. And one that I want to show you is a pair of buff-tailed coronets that were facing off last year in Ecuador about a year ago in a cloud forest. And again, I have pretty low light conditions. I was shooting with my Canon, I was shooting Canon at that point, Canon 300mm f2.8 lens, and I was using f4 to get a little more depth of field for the two of them. I needed 1/800th of a second because they're fighting, they're jostling and moving around. And so I had ISO 2000, so I have some noise to deal with, right? And so I did that just fine using my regular workflow. There's a little bit of noise in the background, but I'm not too worried about it. Sharpness is good on that guy. But the main thing I wanted to look at here is that, you know what, actually I didn't do any noise reduction on this picture at all. I did hardly anything to this picture. This is basically straight out of the camera, and that's fine. But you can see that this guy on the left with his beak open is not as sharp as the guy on the right. And so I thought, well, let's take that into Sharpen and see what it could do where you have, I think this is not sharp, basically due to a depth of field issue. He's just a little bit behind the plane of focus that this guy's on. And you can tell that by the way the branch is angled a little bit. So I took it over in to DeNoise and Sharpen. And this is what I got. DeNoise did a nice job taking out noise from the background. You can see that and leaving detail in the bird. And this is what Sharpen did for that other bird, that other buff-tailed coronet. And take a look. That's quite a bit better. And this is before Sharpen AI, and this is after Sharpen AI. But take a look at what it did to this guy. He's way over Sharpen now, whereas in the original picture, he looked just fine. And so that can be a problem. That's something to be aware of, that you're going to need to have a way, whether it's within Topaz itself or using the plugin not out of Lightroom but out of Photoshop, so that you can selectively unsharpen things that don't need extra sharpening. And so there's that. And the last thing I wanted to look at is now what I consider to be a successful implementation of Topaz DeNoise and Topaz Sharpen AI, which will often be used in combination, I imagine, for most of us nature photographers, wildlife photographers. This is an almost full-frame shot of a bare-throated tiger heron I took a couple months ago here in Costa Rica in a blackwater lagoon. And I really love this shot because I like the deep surroundings, the light hitting only the bird, and I like just these elements of vegetation that framed him. And I waited till he preened in this exact position. And so again, this is you can see from the name of the file, Tiger Heron Standard Lightroom Brushwork.nef. It's a Nikon RAW file. I shot it at 1600 with the D850, and I was hand-holding, and I was sweating, and there were a lot of mosquitoes. So I didn't really nail the sharpness quite as much as I would have liked to on this photo. In fact, I hate to show you this, but it's a little disappointing. But that's what it looked like at 100%. And so I haven't applied any extra sharpening in Lightroom. I haven't done anything. But to me, it's a photo that it would still make it because it's about the bird, but it's about the bird and its surroundings. But it could certainly be better. And so I took it into Topaz Sharpen, and look what it did for this one. That is actually much better. It's a little crunchy. I might work on that a little bit in Lightroom with a brush, maybe to smooth some of that out. But it certainly did a pretty good job, and I would consider this a success.
Well, we covered a lot of ground in this video review, and you might be wondering now, what is my final conclusion as far as the utility of Topaz DeNoise AI and Sharpen AI. As you can tell, I think it gives mixed results. I really don't think, even though I get it free as an affiliate, and I appreciate their efforts, I'm not going to make it a standard part of my workflow, but I do think it would be nice to have, in my toolkit for those images that I really, really like, but maybe through my own fault or just through challenging conditions, the sharpness and maybe the noise and everything didn't come quite all together like I wanted. And so I think Topaz DeNoise AI and Sharpen AI will be able to save some photos for me, and I think they'll be able to do the same thing for you. So I invite you to try it out. They have trial versions, but you can also, again, buy it through the affiliate links right below. I hope you enjoyed this video review, and of course there's a blog post linked right below on my website and my blog where you can see kind of a text version of this video review. But I hope you enjoyed my take on Topaz DeNoise AI and Sharpen AI, and I hope you also learned maybe a few Lightroom tricks along the way, because I showed you a little bit about my behind-the-scenes processing. I have a big ebook and video series called Lightroom for the Nature Photographer that I produced with my friend Keith Bauer a few years ago, and we're keeping it current with new updates to Lightroom. So if you enjoyed that part of the video, please see the link below, and you can check out that ebook and video series. It has over 3 hours of videos where Keith and I walk you through how we process different sorts of nature pictures. But thanks for your time, thanks for your attention, and again, be sure to subscribe to me here on YouTube. I'm going to be doing a lot more videos in the future. It's a new initiative of mine, is to really get my YouTube channel going and to do more videos out in the field. And so I hope you'll stay in touch with me there. And follow me on Instagram and Facebook. I post photos every few days with shooting data, usually some natural history info, and also some photo tips. So thanks a lot. Stay safe and take care, everybody.